We've been looking at examples of faith, and we looked at some from the Old Testament, and we've been started to look at the New Testament. And like last week, we talked about the Centurion and how he demonstrated a faith that was pretty profound. What did the Centurion? How did he show? How did he show faith?
He believed his servant was healed without seeing him.
Yeah, he believed that his servant, that Jesus didn't even need to come, just because of his word, that Jesus had the kind of authority over illness that he had over his troops, that Jesus speaks and the illness listens. And that shows a great deal of faith. And not only that he had it, but he acted on it, that he did something. And sometimes I think we often miss that faith is shown by the actions we take, not necessarily the words we use, because words are pretty easy. I could say all kinds of things. But when you start doing things, it's a lot different. That's kind of where the rubber hits the road, when you take action. And the Centurion not only believed what he believed, he acted on it and did something. Now we're going to look at today sort of the other side of the coin when it comes to faith, because we're going to look at a person who certainly said the right thing, but had a little problem acting on it when it came down to putting his faith into genuine action. And yet, even in that story, we see that Jesus was able to forgive and even restore him. Now, at the beginning of your lesson, you got a little story about a woman and her friend with the nickname. What is happening in that story, and what's happening in that story?
The friend had a nickname that wasn't very pleasant.
Did you wonder what the nickname was?
Yes.
Yes, I did. When I was reading it, I was thinking, yeah, wow. I mean, if it's so bad you don't even mention it,
Case of jealousy there.
Yeah, pooh-yah.
Case of jealousy.
But nickname that was embarrassing or bad, I have no idea what it was, but it was a doozy, and she used it. And why did she use it?
Jealousy.
Because she was jealous and felt neglected. And what ended up happening as a result of her using?
They stayed friends.
What's that?
They stayed friends.
Yeah, and that's kind of amazing. They ended up staying friends. How did the person who used the nickname, how did she end up feeling after she said it?
Horrible.
She felt horrible. She felt really embarrassed that she did it. Now, if you had been in that situation, and not necessarily nickname, but you kind of betrayed a friend for whatever reason, though it appears as though the friend dealt with it a whole lot better than she did, right? Because the friend may have been angry. She really doesn't say, but it didn't leave a permanent break in the relationship. But the person who used it had a hard time, right?
Right.
Why did she have such a hard time?
Guilt.
Okay, she ended up feeling a lot of guilt. So sometimes when you betray a trust, that you end up feeling a lot of guilt. And even when the relationship is restored, and maybe it never broke, you still have to overcome your own guilt in that. And that's kind of what the writer is leading us to believe as we approach the guy on whom we're focused today. And his name is, of course, Peter. Okay. And we've got 4 different little passages having to do with Peter, and they put 3 of them together. Now, one of the things that if y'all have been in studies that I've led, that I'm not a huge fan of, particularly when you've got parallel passages, and these 3 are what are called parallel. They're found in more than one gospel. I'm not a real big fan of drawing them from three different gospels because, each evangelist has his own story, and if you got parallel, you probably want to use the same gospel, and he could have, or she could have here, but for whatever reason chose to use three different gospels to tell this. It's okay, but I would really suggest that you avoid doing that if you can, because the meanings are slightly different, each of the stories, as you look at the Gospels. Anyway, the first one we've got from the Gospel of Mark, and it's of course the great confession at Caesarea Philippi. Jesus and his disciples went on to the village around Caesarea Philippi. On the way he asked them, "Who do people say that I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others say one of the prophets." Now, when Jesus asks, what is he asking the disciples? When Jesus asks this question, what is he asking them? What does he want from them?
Wants to know what they think.
Well, initially, does he want to know what they think?
He wants to know what people think.
Because he says people. He says, what do people think? So in other words, he wants to know what other people are saying about it. One, how the population, how in the Gospels, how what's called the aklos, and the aklos, that's the crowds. How the people see him. He knows how the Pharisees see him, right? Mm-hmm. They don't like it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't think we got all these crowds that are following him around, seeing miracles, bringing their sick to him, eating the fish and the bread he makes. How do they see it, what he's doing? And the disciples, the ones who were there, answer by telling him what?
What did they say?
Yeah, the people are saying that you're John the Baptist, which would have been really tricky because John the Baptist is at this point in the story.
Still alive?
Well, yeah, he's not. He's dead. So because in Mark he just died. So or the story of him dying is just so. John the Baptist would almost be a resurrection. This Elijah business. Why Elijah? I mean, we got a lot of prophets. Why Elijah?
He didn't die.
Yeah, that's right. Remember, Elijah didn't die. He was taken up to heaven, so people believed that when God would come back, when the end of the world came, resurrection of the dead, Elijah, since he never died, would come back, so to sort of oversee it. So, by saying Elijah means he's sort of the one who's bringing in the end, the final days. And then some say, well, he's just another one of the prophets. And then Jesus shifts his focus a little bit because in verse 29 he says, "But what about you?" He asks, "Who do you say that I am?" And how does that represent a shift?
It goes from a whole group to a single person.
Yeah, now it's although the you there is plural. And so if Jesus was from the south, which we know he was, because he was born in Bethlehem, which means he was close to the center of the universe, which they saw as Jerusalem, so he must have been a southerner, like me, born close to the center of the universe, which is Richmond, Virginia. He was a southerner, so Jesus would have said, only would have said it in Hebrew, he would have said, "Who do y'all say that I am?"
Not yours.
Not yuns, but y'all. Who do y'all? Or maybe even, who do all of y'all? Which is even better. All of y'all say that I am. So he's speaking, he wants to know, if the first one is what are they saying out there, he's saying, what do you as a group say? What do you as a group? And who speaks up?
Peter.
And Peter says,
He's the Christ.
"You are the Christ." or the Messiah, because it's the same word, remember. Christ is Greek, Messiah is Hebrew, signifies the same thing, the one on whom the oil is poured. Now, that's really interesting. If we look at this, like I said, this is what's called a parallel passage. So we see the same thing happen in Matthew and Luke. Same thing, same place. In Matthew, Peter doesn't say, you are the Christ, or you're the Messiah. He says, you are the Son of God, which is even more dramatic. And in Luke, he says, you are the Christ of God, which is not as dramatic as Son of God, but certainly a little bit more than Messiah. Regardless of which one you choose to take, although this is probably the lowest of the three in terms of confession, Son of God is higher than Christ or Messiah. What does this show about Peter?
That he's the believer.
Okay, that Peter believes some stuff about Jesus. In fact, if they chose to use Matthew, you could say afterwards, Jesus kind of makes a big deal of what Peter says. And, he says, you didn't figure this out on your own. God led you to do it. And on this confession, I'm going to build my church. And the king, the forces of evil won't prevail again. So it's a very dramatic announcement in the Gospel of Matthew. Not quite so much in Mark. In fact, right after this, Jesus starts predicting his own death. And Peter says, he says, stop talking about it. In what we don't, and Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. That's when he says to Peter, get behind me, Satan. So Peter in Mark kind of blows it right after he says it. But here, Peter certainly seems to know something about Jesus. He's expressing
His love.
his love. He's expressing
Faith.
He's expressing understanding. He's expressing all these things, right? So this is a good thing, right? That Peter does. Now, the second little passage coming from Luke, scene is shifted well into the story. This is happening about midway in all the Gospels. Now we're getting closer to the end, right? We're talking about at the supper. And Jesus says, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Now, what is Jesus suggesting right here about Peter? What does he seem to know about Peter?
He's going to be the leader of the disciples.
Okay, one, he's going to be the leader of the disciples. And since this is from Luke, it's not a surprise, and Luke also wrote Acts. What role does Peter end up playing in Acts? Does he play an important role? Oh yeah, he plays an important role in Acts. He leads the early church when the gospel is being shared in Jerusalem. In fact, after Pentecost, he's the one that stands up and does the first sermon, sort of the definitive sermon. So Peter becomes a big deal. So this shows that Jesus knows he's going to be the leader. What else does Jesus know?
He'll betray him.
He seems to know that he's going to
Deny knowing him.
that he's going to have to come back, right? That your faith may not fail, and when you have turned back, strengthen the brother. And if you got to turn back, that means you must have what?
Left.
You must have left, right? You must have done something to leave. So not only is Simon Peter going to be and Peter's a nickname. I mean, Peter is Petros. So that was kind of a nickname they gave him. Jesus gave him. Not only is Simon going to be a future leader, but something's going to happen from which he's going to have to come back. Of course, when Simon hears that, his response is, but he replied, Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death. So what is Simon doing? Jesus says, Simon, you are going to play an important role later, man. You will be a leader of this group. You're going to help these other guys. But you're going to have to come back to do it. And what does Simon say? What does his response indicate? What is he saying in his response?
He's not gonna do that. He won't fail him.
That's not going to happen. Jesus, you are wrong. I'm not going to need to come back, right? Why am I not going to need to come back?
Because I'll never do it in the first place.
Because I'm never going to do anything bad in the first place. In fact, what am I going to do? Not only am I not going to do something bad, I'm going to, well, what does Peter say?
Oh, I'd go to prison with him.
I'm going to go to prison with you.
Yeah.
Not only am I not going to do anything naughty, I'm going to go to prison with you. I'm even going to die for you. So what do you mean by me having to come back? And then Jesus answered, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny three times that you know me. Now, what is it that Jesus sees in Peter? Remember, Peter, if we're in sort of using math, Peter never wavers. Peter is even after the confession, is a straight arrow. You know, he makes this confession, first one to express any kind of real faith in the gospel of Matthew. What does Jesus see? So on the surface, Peter would seem to be the poster boy of faith. What does Jesus see in Peter?
Weakness.
He sees some weakness. Now, what do you think is the weakness that Jesus sees in Peter?
Fear? No.
Okay, good. You know, maybe he sees that Peter can be afraid. There's something that may scare him. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, I'll die for you. You know, sometimes Christians say that all the time. I'll die for Jesus. Okay. There's a wonderful, I don't know if I saw it, but then later read the book, in a series called I, Claudius. That was way back, like in the 70s, long time ago. Before any of y'all's time, the 70s. And one of the things is about the first 4 Roman emperors. And one of the things the third one is a real piece of work. The third Roman emperor is a real piece of work. Does anybody know who he is? His name? His name is Caligula. Caligula. And Caligula was a nickname. It meant little boots. Little boots. Because when he was a boy, his father was a soldier and took him with him. And when he was a little boy, they made little army boots for him. And so the other soldiers called him Caligula, little boots. So that was his nickname. And Caligula was a real piece of work. And in the show, in the book, he gets really ill, becomes really sick, close to death. But he gets better. And he thinks he's become a god as a result of getting better. So he is now divine. He has become a god through this illness. Anyway, his sort of bodyguard, the head of the Praetorian Guard, the ones who protect him, the soldiers who protect him, they go, and those group of senators are in a room, and he comes out and announces that the emperor is better. He has recovered. And so they all applaud, and they're all happy. And the soldier says, we appreciate, on behalf of the emperor, we appreciate all your concerns and prayers for his recovery. And they say, oh, yeah, that's great. Then the guy goes to one senator, and he says, but your prayers were different than the others. And the senator says, well, I don't know if it's different. He says, no. They were different. When you prayed, you offered your life in exchange for the emperor's. And the senator says, well, yes, I did. And I am so happy that the emperor's alive. And the soldier looks at him and says, then what are you going to do about it? And the senator says, what? He says, well, you offered your life for the emperor, and the emperor is alive.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about it?
Puts him right out there.
And only he was dead serious. He sent a soldier along with the senator to make sure. You know, always be careful when you say, I'm willing to die for you. Because somebody may actually, we may be in a position where somebody says,
Okay.
then what are you going to do about it? Then what are you going to do about it? All right, but so Peter's made this, he would appear to be the poster boy, yet Jesus sees maybe fear, certainly weakness, you know, maybe, you know, a faith that's a little surfacey, little surfacey. You know, I trust when things are going good. You know, I can trust when things are the way I like them to be. You also want to remember the Holy Spirit hasn't been given, so a lot of things haven't happened yet. And was Jesus's assessment of Peter correct? Yeah, pretty much. Meanwhile, Simon Peter was still standing there warming himself, so they asked him, you aren't one of the disciples too, are you? He denied it, saying, I am not. One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him, didn't I see you with him in the garden? Again, Peter denied it, and at that moment, a rooster began to crow. Now, what is Peter showing in this? And again, like I said, this is a parallel passage. It's in all four Gospels. This same story. What is Peter demonstrating?
His humanness.
Certainly demonstrating his humanity, right?
Weakness.
His weakness. Alice, you said earlier, fear. This sounds like a guy who's scared. You know,
Oh, yeah.
he's scared. What is he scared?
They're killing him.
They're scared they're going to kill him. They're scared that what he said he was going to do earlier was going to be done. That they were going to send him to jail or kill him. And he's scared. And what happened to that, I will die for you, Lord? What happened to that?
Went out the window.
It went out the window, right? It went out the window.
But didn't he also hang himself afterwards?
Well, that's going to be Judas.
Judas.
Judas is going to betray him. You know, that's when you look at, and this is particularly true in the Gospel of Mark. When you look at the 12, when I was early in my ministry, even maybe before I even went to seminary, I remember the guy who was as close as a mentor that I ever had, saying to me, you know, don't be discouraged when attendance and membership isn't what you want it to be. Because remember, at the end of his ministry, Jesus had 12 people left. 12 people left. One betrays him, one denies him, and the rest
Follow him.
run away.
Also-
Run away. They run away. Don't expect to do better than Jesus. And I thought that was helpful, and clearly it was one of those things that I still remember after 40 years. I still remember him saying that. So now I think there's a lot of issues. I mean, you can use it as an excuse. There are a lot of negatives with that, but you know, yeah. Peter here is acting like a human being.
Yep.
You know, he was scared. And he acted like scared men do. And they end up doing something. Now, in the story we looked at the beginning, the woman betrayed her friend, called her friend a name. Jerry, you look like you got a question.
Well, if he would have said, yes, I'll I'm with Jesus.
Yeah,
They would have just taken him and put him in jail and maybe killed him
yeah.
also, and he'd have been no good to further the church.
Would have been 4 crosses. Would have been 4
Yeah,
crosses.
right. So, I think Jesus made him say that. I think I mean, there was probably a human thing also, but I think that's what Jesus wanted him to say, because he wanted to use him later.
Okay, good, because that's kind of where we're going. Because when we look at the story, Peter didn't. After he did that, what was Peter's reaction? Now, it's not in the little snippet that we've got here, but you remember what Peter did after he denied and heard the crow?
He wept.
Yeah, he wept. He felt terrible. You know, he wept because Peter knew exactly what he was doing. Not unlike Judas, when Judas hangs himself. You know, knows exactly what he was doing, what he did, and felt really bad about it. The question then becomes, and that's what sort of ties this to that original story. The question is, Peter denies Jesus, just like the friend really did something bad to her friend with the nickname. You know, the question is, can Jesus then forgive and accept Peter? Well, if we turn the page and look at this next story, I think we get an answer. Now, if we look at the other Gospels, we see an answer too. Because like in Mark, when the young man at the tomb tells the women, he says, go and tell Peter and the disciples that. So the young man at the resurrection tells the women to particularly tell Peter, sort of as a sign. Of course, he doesn't tell him to tell Judas, but tell Peter that you're still part of the group. And in Matthew, Peter is part of the group that's on the mountain in Galilee. But in John, it becomes a little more explicit in the 21st chapter. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter. Now understand, Simon Peter is the one who's done what?
Denied.
He's denied him, right? 3 times. You know, the guy who said that he would die with him has now denied him 3 times. Felt bad about it. Jesus says to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, do you know that I love you? Jesus said, feed my lambs. Now, again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The 3rd time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the 3rd time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep.
I have to leave. I'm a greeter today.
You're greeting? Okay, we don't want anybody coming in ungreeted
That's right.
or ungreeted.
Or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's right. Okay, what is happening in this little scene?
Was there a difference between lambs and sheep?
Well,
Because a lamb is pretty trustworthy. I mean, sheep are too, but
that's an excellent point, and we're going to come back to it in just a second. But that's really good that you picked up on it. In general, what is, and there's a reason why. In general, what's going on in this story? Now, understand, you got Jesus, and Jesus has been denied, in a sense, betrayed by Peter as well as Judas. And yet, what is Jesus doing with respect to Peter?
well, he's given Peter 3 times to take it back, basically.
Okay, and giving Peter the opportunity to take it back,
Himself.
redeem himself, and but he's certainly going to Peter. I mean, Jesus's approach wasn't, well, I don't want to have anything to do with him. You know, as far as I'm concerned, he is like Judas. You know, he is a bad penny, and we're going to get rid of him. I'll go and talk to Philip. Or I'll go and talk to John. Or I'll go and talk to Thomas, for crying out loud. But I ain't going to talk to Peter, because they didn't deny me, but he did.
He already failed the test.
And yeah, he'd already failed the test. and you don't get any extra credit, or you don't get a retest, and he failed. So Jesus could very well have said, I'm going to draw a black line through Peter's name. But the fact that he would even ask him those questions showed that Jesus...
He was going to betray him.
What's that?
Jesus knew he was going to betray him.
Knew he was going to betray him, and when he did betray him, Jesus forgave him. Jesus was able to accept what Peter did. Okay? And not only accept what Peter did, but give Peter the opportunity to do something more. In other words, instead of just saying, I forgive you, let's go on. He says, it's like he said, I forgive you, and I'm going to give you a job to do. Because you may not have demonstrated trust in me, but
He has trust in Peter.
I'm going to demonstrate trust in you. I'm going to demonstrate trust in you, which is an amazing thing. Not unlike, and you mentioned it earlier, not unlike what the friend did in the original story. You know, that although she was betrayed when the nickname was released out of jealousy and all, she didn't hold it against her friend. Something very similar happened. Now, you asked about the sheep and lamb, because this is an interesting exchange. And if we read this like here, you know, you think, why would he say it 3 times? Why would he shift animals, or not animals, but shift the maturity level of animals? And why would Jesus change what Peter's supposed to do with them? And I'll tell you, when you look beneath the surface, it becomes even a little more dramatic than it does just seeing it as it's written here. Jerry, what were you going to say?
Or maybe the lambs is kid, young people, or new Christians. New Christians.
Certainly could be.
Entering Christian.
What does Jesus ask Peter 3 times?
Do you love me?
Do you love me?
Oh, yeah.
You realize Jesus, if you look at the Greek, Jesus doesn't ask him that 3 times. Peter's response is exactly the same. But Peter doesn't ask him this. Jesus doesn't ask him the same question 3 times. Let me explain. In English, we've got one word that means love. In the Bible, one word, love. But in Greek, there are 2 different words that are translated love. One is philios, the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. You know, Delphos' brother. So Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love, because phileo is to love. Philios means friend, you know. So that's one kind of love, and that's an emotional love. You know, that's what friends feel towards one another. That's where husbands and wives feel towards one another. It's emotional. It has to do with feelings. That's one kind of love. And in the English translations, they translate it love, because that's what we think of as love. But there's another word that's translated love. Agape. And it's the word we see in 1 Corinthians 13 when Paul says love is patient and kind, not boastful, arrogant, or rude. You know, that's the word agape he uses, or agapeo, as a verb. When Jesus asked Peter the question, and this is really interesting, and Jesus asked, do you love me? He uses the word agapeo. And agapeo, if you look at how it's used in the New Testament, agapeo doesn't have to do with feelings at all. It has to do with action. When you think about what Paul wrote, love is patient and kind, not boastful, arrogant, or rude. None of those are feelings. They're all attitudes, right? Actions. You know, I can be patient with somebody I don't like, right? I don't have to love them to be patient with them, but if I'm going to love them, I got to be patient. Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? He uses agapeo, that action word. Peter's response is phileo. In other words, if you wanted to translate this in a different way that I think may be more accurate, Jesus says, do you love me? And Peter says, Lord, I really like you. I really emotionally like you. And Jesus says, feed my lambs. Now when you look at the three, feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. Which is the easiest of those three? Is feeding lambs easy? No. No, feeding lambs is tough, right? Because they are,
All over the bunches.
rambunctious, and they're lambs, for crying out loud, right?
Kids.
Kids, that's hard. And you feed them is a real challenge. Is tending sheep easy?
No.
No. What do you have to do when you tend sheep?
Shear them, take care of them.
You got to shear them, you got to take care of them. Oh, do you have to feed them if you're tending them? Yeah, you got to feed them, you got to herd them around.
Watch animals,
Sheepdog.
don't get them.
Got to watch out for animals, you got to protect them.
Good dog.
Yeah, because sheep are the dumbest animals God created. You know, they are just dumb. And you got to protect them from themselves. They just aren't real bright. In spite of the fact that Debbie and I were really impressed by the sheep detectives. They were really smart. That was really cute. And so I had a new appreciation of sheep. But, you know, tending sheep is hard. Feeding lambs is hard. In fact, if you look at the three, which is the easiest? Feeding sheep is easier. It's not easy, but it's easier than the other two. It's really interesting. In each of these responses that Peter makes, he uses the word phileo, like. Jesus uses agapeo, active love, until he gets to the third time. In other words, the first two times Jesus says, agapeo, are you willing to be active? Are you willing to actively love me? That's quite a dedication. The job you do, if you're able to do that, the job is tough. It's feeding lambs. It's tending sheep. And each time Peter isn't able to do that because he never gets beyond feeling emotionally connected to Jesus. But the third time, instead of Jesus doing the same thing again and saying, Peter, if you don't agape, you can't follow me. You got no place. You are no good. Jesus changes the question and says, Peter, do you like me? And Peter said, I've said it 3 times. You know how much I like you. And Peter still gives him a job to do. Even though Peter's connection to Jesus doesn't go any deeper at this point than just emotion. Yeah, I like you. Boy, we're like this. What a friend I have in Jesus. Philios. Even though his relationship with Jesus never gets further than that, never gets deeper than that, he still has a job to do. And I think that makes us even more profound. Because for us, even when our faith falters, and even when our love is not very deep, not very active, we can still do something for Christ. And he still accepts us. He still asks us to help him. We still can have a part in his mission. We don't have to be perfect in either our faith or our love to serve Jesus Christ. There's a job for us to do. And I find that really, really powerful in this passage that we kind of miss because English translations are English translations. That's the way it is. That's the way it goes. Okay. Here's a reconciled disciple, a man who expressed faith, kind of fell away, but still had a role to play. Now next week we're going to look at Zacchaeus. And what do we all know about Zacchaeus? He was a wee little man. In fact, I think you could even say a wee little man was he.
Yes.
Yes.
In a sycamore tree.
Really? Why did he climb up in a sycamore tree, Donna?
Because he was short.
Yeah.
Because he's a wee little man.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to look at Zacchaeus, a repentant tax collector. Okay, let's have a word of prayer. Lord God, thank you so much for giving us this time. Bless us as we seek perfection. We seek to make our faith strong and our love deep. Help us to recognize that even though we will probably never get there, you still love us and you still give us a job to do. Help us to claim that in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.